Hey, what's up, America? Welcome to Good Night, America. I'm America's sweetheart, Eric Ryan. This is a very special edition of the show. This is what I'm going to call the "What Would Jesus Do" edition of Good Night, America. So here to discuss with me the big, beautiful bill in pertinence to what Jesus would do is a former evangelical minister, preacher. Which word do you use? Preacher?
Why don't you go with preacher?
A former evangelical preacher, an author, a cattle rancher, and the coach of the Detroit Lions, Rick Patterson. Welcome to the show to talk
Good
about
to be here.
Oh, isn't it?
Good to be here as always.
So this is what I wanted to do in light of the big beautiful bill passing. I want to see this thing through the lens of Christianity, and I'll tell you why. Because ostensibly we're a Christian nation. Now, let's talk about the decision makers. Let's talk about those in politics. This is what really matters, I think. So let's look at the House. The House is 87% Christian. That's a lot, 87. As a matter of fact, though, I think it's kind of low. I don't know what the rest of them are. The Senate is anywhere between 86 and 88% Christian. So the vast majority of the House and Senate are Christian. The president pretends to be a Christian, even though he held the Bible up backwards and can't cite a single passage. The vice president is famously a Catholic somehow. And the Supreme Court, there's 9 justices. 6 are Catholic, 1 is Protestant, 1's Episcopal, and 1 is Jewish. So again, wildly Christian. All right. So I just said all of that to set the table to say that you would think as a Christian nation whose decision makers are wildly Christian, that the laws, the bills, the budgets they pass would have some root in Christian values. That's not an unreasonable position to take, right?
It's not unreasonable. The challenge, I think, though, is that Jesus himself said that the path of Christianity is, in fact, a narrow road. There's few people on it. So when you have this many people and they're collectively, by and large, Christian, if that means all that really means is we're all really on the wide road. Yeah. Okay? Because the narrow road, by definition, is narrow. It means there's not a lot of people here. There's a reason there's not a lot of people here. And if we see ourselves just constantly swamped with collectively people called Christian, something might be up.
Sure. Now, listen, I don't think the road, I don't think it necessarily has to be narrow because this guy, your guy, the Jesus, he said some things that are very obvious. They're not hard to interpret. So if you were to just, follow the teachings of Jesus, I think you'd have a pretty good understanding of the things he wanted you to do. So what I had ChatGPT do is I fed it the big, beautiful bill. And then I said, this doesn't come across as very Christian-y to me. Can you pull out 10 things that you don't think are Christian-y and then juxtapose them with a very obvious biblical passage about why they might be wrong? So this is is this what would Jesus do or what would Satan do? Big, beautiful bill edition. Okay, ready? Here's number 1. So there are tax cuts for the wealthy at the expense of the poor. And I said, well, that doesn't sound like what Jesus would do. And then ChatGPT goes, you know what? You're right. Here's a couple passages that prove you right. Here's, woe to you who are rich, for you have already received your comfort. That's Luke 6:24. And then sell your possessions and give to the poor. That's Luke 12:33. This is what the big, beautiful bill does. The bill extends and expands tax breaks to the top 1%, corporations and billionaires, while cutting food stamps, housing aid, and Medicaid. Was Jesus into trickle-down economics, you think?
He was not into trickle-down economics. I think the challenge you're up against, though, is that you said something that this is not hard to understand. There's nothing about following Christ that's hard to understand. It's very easy to understand. The problem is it's hard to actually do.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's commonly understood that people want religion in school, right? They want prayer in school, for example, but they don't want to feed the kids.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Maybe don't put up the 10 commandments. Maybe wipe out their bill so they can eat. Wouldn't that be what Jesus would do, you think? I know. It's very complicated, I think. Some of the things he says, they're just very hard to understand. So let's go to the number 2, because this is very confusing what Jesus said. I can see how they could be confused. So number 2, in this bill, there are cuts to health care for the sick and the poor. Now, oh my God, where does Jesus stand on the sick and the poor? Let's find out. I was sick and you looked after me. Whatever you did for the least of these, you did for me. Ooh, what could he possibly mean? That's Matthew 25:36. So the bill slashes Medicaid funding, strips subsidies for low-income healthcare, and removes protections for millions. That's sort of, it doesn't feel like they're really helping the sick. It sort of feels like they're abandoning the sick. Now, these are Christians, and what Jesus said, I don't know, kind of seems obvious. Yeah. Well, see, that's my issue, and that's the prevailing issue I have with modern Christianity. You're allowed to feel like there's no moral obligation to take care of the poor. It's fine. You can defend that stance. Not if you define yourself as a Christian. So stop ramming it down our throats if it's not what you believe in. If you know what I mean? Like it's not actually what you believe in. It's only what you're pretending to believe in because you're under the umbrella of Christianity. But Jesus, your guy, is very, it's not shrouding it in mystery how he feels about these things. So why the water's muddied at all is very bothersome.
As I say, this isn't rocket science.
Not rocket science.
It's laid out. It's black and white. We don't want to see it, because it's tough to do. It's tough to sacrifice. Bottom line is, in the big, beautiful bill, all right, I don't know how much I'm going to save in taxes. Let's call it $1,000. Okay. Yeah. So I'm $1,000 richer as a result of the big, beautiful bill. I am purportedly a follower of Jesus Christ. Am I going to take that $1,000 and send it off to somebody who doesn't deserve it? It'll be a challenge. Am I going to do it though? I might try.
Yeah. I just find the whole thing very hard to buy into in terms of seriousness. We're $36 trillion in debt right now. This bill, I think, increases it by another trillion. Let me remind everybody that a trillion is 1 million million. It's a lot of goddamn money. All right. So like cutting these, we're going to dent this 36 trillion. Really? Is that what we're going to do by taking Medicare and Medicaid and food stamps away from poor people? You really think there's that much fraud, waste, and abuse in the system that we're going to dent this 36 trillion? It's just all ridiculous. It seems just punitive because I've said this to you before. No one hates poor Christians as much as rich Christians do. And now they get to punish them. And now that's exactly what they're doing, because those who pass this bill are almost exclusively Christians.
Well, it's not just that rich Christians don't like poor Christians, but a lot of times we think if they're poor, they must not be Christian. So take Joni Ernst, for example. She suggested that the poor didn't need Medicaid. The poor needed Jesus. Yes. The assumption there, you can tell, is that the poor don't have Jesus.
Right. Because Jesus famously drove a Lamborghini. So everyone knows he was a man of wealth and fine taste, a man of sophistication. He didn't like the poor at all, right? That's my understanding. Okay. Well, speaking of which, okay, so let's go to the third take. In the big, beautiful bill, according to ChatGPT, which read the thing, and I'm sure you didn't, neither did I, eliminating food assistance for families in need. Now, what would Jesus' take be on this? He gave us some clues. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. That's Matthew 5:42. And they need not go away. You give them something to eat. Matthew 14:16. The bill imposes stricter work requirements and funding caps on SNAP, which are food stamps, school lunch programs, and WIC. School lunch programs. WIC, women, infant, children. This is what the Christians of this country, those Christians in power, are attacking. These are the programs they go after. Really?
And what's odd is the passage you did not use, which is Matthew 25, which literally says, if you have fed them, you have actually fed me.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
So basically, what we're saying as followers of Jesus is that we have no interest in actually taking care of Jesus.
Right.
So again, it's not like Jesus shrouded this idea in mystery. Yeah. He said, what you have done to the least of these, you have done to me. But he also said, what you have not done to the least of these, you have not done to me.
Oh, yeah.
So the choice is in 3 sentences, extremely clear. But we are simply choosing to ignore what's actually in the Bible. Let
me ask you this, very macro understanding of the two characters, Jesus and Satan. Who of the two, with our general macro understanding, would take food away from children? Would it be Jesus or would it be Satan? Which one of these, you know what I mean? Which character would you say was more likely to starve children? Wouldn't you think it would be Satan?
Well, okay, so I don't know Satan personally, but the reality
what do you
is,
know of him? What you've heard from,
what I've heard of him is, I'm not sure Satan would either, because I personally think Satan is getting a crap ton of mileage out of this. I think Satan is letting everybody know what hypocrites these Christians are, because Satan is getting a lot of mileage. Because frankly, people like me and this whole group of atheists that you acknowledge that are unaffiliated, do you know why we're unaffiliated? Because we look at what's going on with Christianity today and we say, that's dumb as hell. I want nothing to do with that. Okay.
Even Satan's offended. He's like,
even Satan's like, I can't.
We're moving in on his territory. It's like, I thought I was supposed to starve the kids, and now the Christians are doing it.
Like, you're writing my material for me.
I know. I have this copyrighted. I'm the evil one. And modern Christianity is like, bullshit, you are. All right, here's another one. Again, pretty Satan-y for a bunch of Christians passing legislation.
If you let prayer back in school, I don't even know what that means, but if you let prayer back in school and had a bunch of kids around a table who were hungry, what do you think that they would, if you allowed them to pray, what would they be praying for? Food?
I'm starting to piece this together. Yeah.
And here's the funny thing is that, and here's where I'm kind of a big fan of Catholicism over against evangelicalism. Okay, so you'll enjoy this, but
my former religion.
Your former religion, and my upcoming religion. I hope one day to make it to be a Catholic.
I'll put in a good word for you. Yeah, I'll get you in. I can pull some strings.
Don't do that. Okay, I'm good. So, here's the thing: is that we bring food to people so that we have a chance to tell them about Jesus.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Jesus said, "Bring them food because they're hungry."
Yeah, that's a better thing to do with it. Either way is fine. They're getting fed. But yeah, I mean, if I don't have to listen to the preaching, sure, I'd rather just eat my sandwich in peace.
Well, and what Jesus said, again, this isn't rocket science, is those people you feed will see your deed, not you, not the fact you did it, and they'll say, thank God somebody fed me.
Right.
That in the feeding itself, in the deed itself, somehow they come to see that God has cared about them.
I would say that this bill suggests that God does not care about them.
You have hungry kids, and we argue about how did they get there? They're not good parents or taking advantage of us, blah, 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 blah. And we argue about all that. But they're kids. You gotta feed the kids. You gotta feed human beings. Why should we do that? Because Jesus said, "When you've done to them, you've done to me." Mm-hmm. One sentence.
I've said it before. The way I know that the United States might not be savable is that we have our problems. Obviously, we have our obvious problems. But you would say generally, the mark of a decent country, and certainly the mark of America, is that we care about our children and our veterans. Can't we all wrap our head around caring about children and veterans? Well, we don't. Gun violence is the number one killer of children between the ages of 0 and 18. There are starving children on the street. 22 veterans kill themselves a day. Nobody does anything about any of these problems. So we're just accessible. We don't care about anything except for the dollar. As long as we worship the dollars, everything's fine. As long as we're capitalists, we're not communists. So whatever's done in the name of the dollar is fine because the dollar is our God. So I would much rather have a Christian nation if they lived up to their ideals. But instead, we are godless except for the dollar. So here we are.
Well, and
America.
That's a biblical norm, right? You have to choose your God. And so many of us want both gods. We want to serve what the Bible called mammon, right? Money. Mm-hmm. And Jesus said, you just can't do it. But that's what we're trying to do. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, well, we should probably stop. Although, I mean, we're an oligarchy now. It really doesn't matter. The train's left the station. It's over. Okay, three more. No forgiveness for the financially burdened. Now, Jesus said, forgive us our debts as we have also forgiven our debtors. That's Matthew 6:12. Instead of debt relief, though, the bill ignores the student debt crisis and adds new barriers for assistance. Jesus would be flipping tables about this kind of thing, would he not?
What we're afraid of is people taking advantage of us, people going in debt and then holding us responsible. That somehow we are responsible for what somebody else has done. Let me give you an insight into a very basic Christian tenet here. Jesus Christ, the one we proclaim to be worshiping, ultimately his claim to fame is that he paid the price for stuff he didn't do. Right? Yeah. So it's his claim to fame. And then he said, guess what, folks? If you're following me, it's going to happen to you. Yeah. Welcome to the club.
You know, the grand irony here, though, is that the ruling class has convinced us that the fellow peasants are the ones that are driving us into debt. Let me remind you, the U.S., the debt the United States owes is $36 trillion. Do you think that's the peasants, or do you think that's the ruling class driving us into a $36 trillion bill? And then saying, well, we got to pay this somehow. We have to cut your subsidies. We have to cut the social safety nets. We have to make sure SNAP isn't there. Let me remind you, we're $36 trillion in debt. And unlike the rest of the world, we don't have single payer healthcare. Unlike the rest of the world, we don't have paid maternity or paternity leave. Unlike the rest of the world, we don't have affordable higher education. So we're this far in debt without any of the benefits that the rest of the world gets. So it's clearly the ruling class that is taking advantage of us and then convincing us that it's the other peasants, which is for a bunch of Christians, 86%, not very nice.
Well, you know, what everybody requires is that we find somebody to hate. It keeps us in power. If we can, if we can be convinced that there's somebody out there who is the boogeyman, in this case, the peasants, then somehow we collectively can hate them, even if we are the ones ourselves that are bleeding out. And so but the thing is, this has been true from the dawn of time. All right. But we're oblivious to the fact it's happening. So you're exactly right. Trillions of dollars in debt. And you know whose fault it is? A bunch of immigrants coming across the Mexican border. Right. Yeah, that's who's to blame.
That'll solve the problem. As soon as we get them out of here, that 36 trillion is going to disappear. It'll never come back either, because it's not the ruling class making stupid decisions. It's clearly us.
Which points to the whole lunacy of all this is that the ruling class desperately needs those immigrants to work for them.
Of course they do. Of course.
But somehow we need the boogeyman worse.
Yeah. So here we are. Speaking of which, here's another one. The bill prioritizes nationalism over global compassion. Jesus asks, who is my neighbor? According to Luke 10:29, the answer is anyone who suffers. But the bill embodies isolationist and nationalist values over the universal compassion. I don't think a nationalist or isolationist policy is going to work in a global economy. I think this is a horrible idea. I don't think Jesus probably couldn't have seen this kind of thing coming. But just being part of a global community is probably more Jesus-y than an isolationist nationalist ideology. Don't you think?
Well, you know what? Even if it wasn't Jesus-y, I think most people would say it's just good business. But here's a weird spot where being a follower of Christ and the fact that it's just good business actually go hand in hand, you know? Regardless of whether or not you're a Jesus follower, to be an isolationist simply means that you're setting yourself up for failure, even if there is no God.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And number 10, I think this is, you just touched on it, but it's turning the state into a tool for the powerful. According to Matthew 6:24, you cannot serve both God and money. And the bill doesn't reflect a servant government. It's a corporate wish list dressed in patriotic slogans. And once again, we've bought into it. So here we are. I think the bill is what Satan would do, not what Jesus would do. But listen, I'm just a dumb atheist. So what do I know, you know?
Well, therein lies a dilemma, is that you actually do know. And I really don't mean to compliment you. I don't take a lot of pleasure in that. But the fact of the matter is, you actually know what Jesus Christ is supposed to look like.
Right.
The challenge is that for so many of us in government and other places are living a life that's opposite of what the person of Jesus Christ actually represents. What you're claiming as an atheist is that Jesus is legit. This is the right way to do things. But what you're also confronting is the fact that that's not how we're actually living, which is an incredibly valid thing to confront. The challenge for the rest of us is to ask ourselves, how do we continue to pursue and live like Christ, even inside this sphere we're in of anti-Christianism, I should say, even though it actually is Christianism? How can Rick Patterson actually continue to be a giving person concerned about the children at school who don't have food? What can I personally do about it right now? That's the challenge in front of us.
Yeah. The government's not making it easy. You know what I love too is all those pictures of the Congress people like huddling and praying over the bill. Like it is such it's such theater, and we continue to buy into it. You know, it's outrageous. And I used to think as a kid when they tell us these stories about medieval England, and it was one castle and 1,000 peasants out there forced to work the fields. I was like, why don't they just storm the castle? I'm sure there's guards. If you're going to die, but eventually you'll take over. And you could argue that's what the January 6ers were trying to do, but we just take it. Historically, the peasants always take it, no matter what the kingdom looks like. We just sit around and we're like, oh, okay, this is fine. 36 trillion in debt, starving children, dead veterans. When does anything change? When are we going to get together and be like, this is bullshit? We should probably, do anything related to the guy we pretend to worship at any point, but we don't.
The challenge really, though, it gets back to that we don't see it, especially in the U.S., because even the poor in the U.S. are infinitely probably richer than the poor in any other part of the country. I read a quote from, it was Warren Buffett, I think, that compared to the richest man in 1908, that I live better. I have better medical care. I have better food. I have better services than the richest man in the world in 1908 that I'm living, And so what we have to realize is that we're sort of addicts. We're addicted to the system, Yeah. And so we're complicit, even us followers of Jesus who have wealth, and I do, you do, my neighbors do.
Right.
We're complicit with this because it feeds us.
Yeah, I'm not sacrificing any percentage of my disposable income to make anybody's life any better, other than the liquor store owner. But my problem is when it comes to government, if you got $36 trillion in debt, you're taking my taxpayer dollars. I don't think you're distributing it correctly. I would rather feed children than buy more bombs, and I think we should start there. I know it's infinitely more complex than that, like at a micro level, but they're taking my money, and I'd prefer they do better things with it. So let's start there.
Is it really infinitely more complex than that, really?
I don't think it is, but I feel obligated to say that.
I mean, maybe it is, but it's a budget, And the funny thing is that for any of this stuff, we continue to borrow. So I think here's the weird challenge. Let's say Jesus sitting right next to me right now, okay? And I say, Jesus, do you think I should go to the bank and borrow a bunch of money to feed kids? He'd say, no.
No, it's fiscally irresponsible.
It's stupid, man. But what you could do is sell some of your stuff to feed kids. What you could do is quit buying more of stuff you feel like you need so you can feed kids. But we got to stop borrowing money to feed kids. But we got to stop borrowing money to build all this other stuff too. We got to stop borrowing money to give it to everybody. We got to start living within our means.
To be fair, I do feed my kids. Yeah, I don't know. There's more to say, but I think we should save it for another episode. I think this was good. I think we really we dissected the big, beautiful bill. As it turns out, it's right on par with exactly what Jesus would want us to do. So yes, we are a Christian nation. Everything's fine. Don't worry about it. Things are going swimmingly. We've made America great again because the kids are hungry, but you can buy a silencer now for $200 off. Exactly what Jesus would want. We nailed it. Yes. Anyway, Rick, thanks for being on the show. I look forward to having you next week and every week until I'm the new Jesus, which I think is coming up. We both have notable hair, I would say. Eccentric hair, me and the Jesus.
It's a start. Eccentric hair anyway. True that.
I'm working on my abs. I'm never wearing sandals, but I wear Timberlands, because I grew up in the 90s. All right, hey, listen. See you next week, America.